All right, thanks for everyone who was able to make it today. Is it hot enough for you out there yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet? No? Well, I have good news for you guys. It's only going to get warmer from here. Quick question, what's the topic for today? Anyone remember? What was that? Calvinism. So that we wrapped up last time. We put a period on that. And then I left you guys with a question. Faith. And what was the question that we asked? What is faith, right? What is it? Anybody came up with any answers? I see.
Believing in not just what you see.
Okay, wow, very good.
So
Okay.
action-based, I would say also.
Very good definition. Action-based, don't believe what you just see. Inusha, what did you come up with?
Faith is to have trust.
To have trust, okay. All right, so we thought about this, we marinated on the question hopefully, and today we're going to discover a little bit more about what faith is, how we can have faith, and what that looks like. But first, let's start off with the story. Okay, this is going to be a good story. Say you're hopping in a van, and you're off to a road trip. And let's see, where are we going? Where are we going on this road trip? Montana, Utah. Mars, right? Where are we going? Yeah, let's say we're going to Mars. And on the way to our vacation destination, you brought along 2 passengers with you who are sitting in your back seat. Now, on a road trip, would you rather be the driver or the passenger? Oh, I see. Okay. Passenger? No freeloaders out there? Okay. Back seat, take me there, take me here. So these 2 passengers, they're on this road trip with you. Everyone's really excited to go to this, really new awesome cabin you have in Mars. Now say your passengers get a little hungry. And then they say they get a lot hungry. They say, we need to stop right now and we need to eat. Now the biggest, most, healthiest passenger says, hey, I really want to stop by here and get some food. I experienced it a lot, it's well trusted, great results, it'll get you full. I really want to eat here. And the second passenger, says, I don't really want to eat there. Let me offer you a second option. Let's do a healthy alternative. Let's go to a co-op, get the farm to fresh to farm, fork to fork, finest choice of food, the most organic you could find. Not a bacteria of GMO exists. Let's go get that. And look, it's affordable. $4 plus tax for some tomatoes, a couple more ingredients, and you have an affordable, $35 salad. So, these are your 2 options. Where are you stopping?
The co-op.
Co-op. We have a taker for the co-op. Any other takers? What's that? No food. Just, you know what? I can keep going. We'll find something in the desert, okay? So you have 2 options, McDonald's or co-op? Roadkill. Okay, third option, say, hey, I'm not limiting myself to just 2 options. Here's a key piece of information I forgot to include. Now, McDonald's is 5 minutes away. The co-op farmer's market, 15 minutes away. So with McDonald's, you're going to only have a 15-minute detour, 5 minutes there, 5-minute drive-through, 5-minute back. With farmer's market, minimum 3 hours, minimum. So now which one are you going to choose? So the question you're going to ask yourself is, what's more important? The meal and quality of meal I'll eat, or the time it takes to my destination as to where I'm going? This is a very, maybe weird puzzle. You're like, well, there's always more options, right? But today we're going to look at this example throughout this entire lesson. We're on this road trip. We have these 2 choices. And some choices we have to compromise one to get the other. McDonald's, yes. We might want to save time. We want to save money. Although recently, it's actually pretty expensive. Have you guys been lately? I just tried once and I was like, whoa, In-N-Out's cheaper than this and better. So what's more important, the meal or destinations? This is an interesting puzzle that we're going to look at and come back to and hopefully come to a solid conclusion. So what's the topic of today? Now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. These are the big three, and we're going to take them on one at a time because it's so much jam-packed into such a little verse. So what is faith? Now let's say, for example, because we're all believers here, you come out on the street and the stranger comes to you and says, hey, I hear Christians have this thing called faith. You call yourself believers, faithful. What does that mean? I've never heard of faith. Can't even tell you what it looks like when I see it. Never touched it, tasted it, smelled it. What is faith? And how would you, being a believer, a Christian, explain faith to this person? Because to this person, faith to them is the same thing as like this is to you. What is magnetohydrodynamics, Show me what that looks like. And you're just like, huh? Like, what is that? So a person might see faith the same way. And how do we simplify faith to where that person can understand that's what faith is? It's a totally brand new concept. Well, as with anything and everything in life, if you want to learn something, where do you go?
The library.
The library. And which book do you pull out? The dictionary. And you look at it and you're like, that's what that word means. Magnets, okay, hydro, water, dynamic, something's moving. Okay, I'm starting to somewhat understand because I know what these words mean. So I have to know, what does faith mean? We don't have to go very far. We don't have to go to the library. We can reach into our pockets, grab the Bible, and it defines it as the following. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. So we have big three, right? Faith, hope, and love. Today we're talking about faith. So we're going to really see it from a little bit more defined perspective, this what we do not see part. So we see faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Let's do a little experiment. Check out the faith levels of the crowd. What's behind this door?
A surprise.
A what?
Surprise.
A surprise, okay. We'll see. If you know it, then it's not a surprise. I hear a light behind this door. So if I'm going to open the door, what will you see behind the door? Dominic, what would you see? A bathroom, okay. Yeah, what would you see? Tubes, okay. Mike, what would you see? Definitely another door? Oh, open the door, there's another door? Okay. Christina, what would you see? A big bed. Okay, I think we all see what we want, right? So did you guys know that actually behind this door is a bowl of apples? Now let me ask you guys a question. How confident were you in your guesses? 50-50? Anybody 100% like life savings, all in, everything. It's a bathroom behind that door, it's another door. I know it is. It's a Photoshop. Okay, thank you. Perfect. Should have worked a little bit more on it. Not made it that up. Yes. Okay, so you probably didn't have much confidence, right, in your guess. You're like, maybe it's this. Okay, I'll play, right? And you didn't have that assurance. You didn't see what was behind the door. You could guess, maybe it's one thing or another, but you for sure were not for sure about your guess. You couldn't. So how do I get assurance of something I don't see or I can't see? Now, if you saw me make this presentation or heard someone tell you, hey, spoiler alert, Jesse's going to do this, silly little example, bowl of apples, say bowl of apples. Then you could, hey, I'll be a really rich guy if I put all my life savings that he's going to say bowl of apples. But then you'd be 100% confident. But what about faith, right? It's not a door with a bowl of apples. What about faith? Why are there 45,000 denominations of faith? Does it really divide up that many times? And also, check this out. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. Because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. this is a phrase which also defines a consequence of faith. That a person who doesn't have it cannot ever please God. It doesn't say if anyone who's not the Baptist denomination, that person, impossible to please God. Who did we talk about last time? The brothers. What were their names? Cain and Abel. And who was able to please God? Abel. Who was not able to please God? Cain. How was Abel able to please God? There's a tongue twister. How was Abel able to please God? How was he able to do that? It's not because it was just his name. Through faith, exactly. Abel was able to do it by faith. Why did Cain not please God? Because he didn't do it by faith, but by personal interpretation. By that personal experience when, hey, I think maybe I should do fruit instead of a living sacrifice like Abel. So biggest verse of the day. If you walk away with anything, I want you to understand this. If I don't have faith, it's impossible for me to please God. So I need to understand it's not magneto, hydro, whatever, something that's not relevant. It's very relevant to me as a Christian. If I don't have faith, I can't please God. So the first thing you would tell the strangers, hey, one thing you should know about faith, if you don't have it, you can't please God. So you have to understand what faith is. It's the most important thing you could have. What is faith? It's confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Biggest thing, if you walk away with anything, it's with this. This is what faith is. But let's dive in more and let's take a look at what maybe people struggle with when they read this. And I've come up with my own maybe interpretation about the three biggest struggles that people have with faith. Maybe there's more, maybe there's less. But in my own opinion, this is what I think the three biggest struggles people come across when they deal with a serious topic like faith. So they say this, and I'm sure you've heard of this one, and I'm sure you've even lived through this one. There's lack of evidence for faith, plenty of evidence for fear. There's a really great expression in capitalistic America that says, show me the money. You're saying some really great things. It's a pretty picture. Show me the money. Show me the evidence. See, the money, for example, could say, I don't know, cancer. But faith says 100% restoration. See, there's a lot of evidence for no miracles, but faith says you can fly if you want to. And if you don't want to fly, you can check out other methods of transportation, like walking on water. What's going on here? Classic textbook example. Peter, right? We all know this story. The only guy known, maybe the second guy ever known to walk on water. He's holding the record still to this day. And we know this awesome part of this miracle. We all wish we could recreate this in our lives, right? Walking on water, who wouldn't want to experience that? But this is probably what probably most of us do, in fact, experience, is this part. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, he said, why did you doubt? He didn't say, I'm sorry. I didn't calm the ocean even more for you. I'm sorry I didn't make it even more convenient. I cemented the water underneath your feet. And I'm sorry I didn't do more. He doesn't apologize. He says, you. And he uses this interesting word. Why did you doubt? He turns the blame around and the consequences back on Peter. Yes, here's the master of the universe, 5 feet away. He could have, hit a pause button and the ocean would have stopped. But it wasn't enough that Peter was actually walking on water. It didn't process in his brain, and he started to drown because he needed more. He started to doubt. The waves are big. Wait, water's wet. Wait, I can't walk on it. There's this interesting poem called, I'm not sure what it's called, but it has this line. I talk to God, but the sky is empty. It's like humans, they just doubt. Like, yeah, we'll try, we'll take that, but nothing's gonna happen. I'm gonna walk on water, but I'm gonna drown. And so humans doubt. And Jesus says, if you doubt, there's no room there for faith. It's a tale as old as time. We remember this from the Old Testament, right? Spies come back with reports of the promised land. And what did they say? Oh, guys, God, it's promised. Let's go, enter into the promised land that's promised to us. That's what they said, right? No, they said, no, we can't take it. There's giants there. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which he sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here's its fruit. It's great. It's amazing. It's the promised land. But the people who live there are very powerful. Cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. We can't attack those people. They're stronger than we are. Spies come back with reports. And only Caleb and Joshua are the only two men who showed faith in such a fearful situation. So what kind of logical conclusion can we come to with these two stories, right? We can come up with this conclusion that if there's fear, there won't be faith. If there's doubting, if there's anything else that's the opposite of faith, that's anti-faith. And we can also make the opposite conclusion that faith is anti-fear. That when you have faith, you're not afraid. Right? When angels come, they always said, what? Do not be afraid. And when people had faith and they had nothing to hide, they weren't afraid. They were talking with angels because they had that faith. Jesus calls Peter a doubter. And he gives him this analysis of little faith. For not being able to follow through on the fact that he could walk on water like it was solid ground. He was already experiencing that. It's not that it was out of realm of possibility. It was already a possibility in his life. It already happened. The Israelite spies doubt that they could have taken over the promised land because there's literally giants living there. And like we talked today with David and Goliath, right? Literally giants. Can't deny it. When Jesus called Peter before Peter drowned, he says, Lord, call out to me, I'll walk to you. Okay, come. And what happened? Peter walked. Peter had faith, and it worked. When God called out Israel and said, defeat these lands, these promised lands, and when Joshua led with faith, it worked. Anything that Jesus or God, God says to us comes back 100% completion every single time. But sometimes we invite this fear and the evidence around us, this visible evidence we can touch and feel, that succumbs our faith and eradicates it. And this leads to the second struggle that people go through in dealing with faith. They're faithful but fruitless, right? And that's in quotes, should be. Because as we know, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. Faith without actions is dead. Peter was walking on water. The second he stopped believing, he was literally dying. That is a good interpretation for us in our lives, that in the spiritual life, we're very much the same way. If we stop believing, if we're not continuing and working out our faith with actions and deeds and works, we literally start decaying. Faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. Or, ready for the casket, just send it off. Or, in other cases, people, they collect religions. I've heard of people, I was a Buddhist, a Taoist, a this, serenity, just trying to figure everything. I've tried Christians, I've tried Muslims. There's people who literally seek the answer for life, and they're not like us, who are like, oh, let me Google about it. No, like, I want to know the answer. So they'll try everything out, right? They'll collect all the religions. But we read real faith, if not accompanied by action, is dead. What does that mean? Well, imagine this. It's like buying a ticket to Disneyland, right? But never going. Like this guy did. Bought the very first Disneyland ticket. Never went. If you buy a Disneyland ticket and don't go, eventually it will what? Expire. It will die, in other words. And it's useless as an entry ticket into Disneyland. This was the very first one. It's now useless as a ticket. Worthless. It's probably $0 now, Disneyland is negative $1 because of this guy. But here's also another struggle that people face while going through faith, dealing with faith. that their belief is based on guesses. They said, okay, I'll try all these religions. I guess this one sounds the most right. This one feels the best to me. These ones are okay, these ones not really. I guess this one's the most true. They're like, hey, what's on the other side of this door? And they'll have an answer for you. They might say, you know what, I know, I'll be right back. And then he comes back and he's in swimming shorts, goggles, and says it's a water park behind that door. I know it is. I spent my whole life getting ready for this water park. The fanciest, swimming shorts, most expensive goggles. He's ready. There's another guy with his own door, and he's laughing at this guy, going, man, this guy's totally not ready. It's a farm. I got my shovels, my boots, my overalls, my experience. I worked my whole life to be the best farmer that when I come to this door, when I open it, I can work that farm. And you know what? They read this verse and say, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Okay, I don't see the farm, don't see the water park yet, but I feel very confident. They feel very confident that what's behind this door is that what they think it is. Because here's how they interpret this verse. Now, faith is self-confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we want. This doesn't exist. People think this is how faith works. Hey, I want something really, really bad. And I'm going to say it out loud. I'm going to think about it a lot. I'm going to invest time, energy, money into it. And that's what faith is, because I don't see it yet, but it's going to happen. And I'm going to be very confident that when I open that door, there's a water park there. No, really, as we know, what's behind the door? Bowl of apples, right? So there's the three struggles with faith. Too much evidence for fear. The water, you can drown in the ocean, right? The giants can step on you and kill you. That there's way too much reality going on around me to leave room for faith. Or maybe we consider ourselves faithful. I believe God is. He rewards those who seek him. Yes, I believe that. But there's no miracles in my life. Or there's no really kind of assurance or confidence. I'm always just kind of anxious or depressed, kind of the other things. So how can we go about this situation? How can we have assurance about what we cannot see? Well, here's a follow-up question. What's something you cannot see, touch, or feel, but if you didn't have them, you wouldn't be alive? You can touch and feel air, inflate a balloon, feel it, it's air. Your tires feel air for sure. Life, you can see life. Someone's dead or not. Smells too. Person has a lively smell. What's that? Spirit? I think you can feel the spirit. You could probably base it on that. But you're kind of getting there. Your thoughts. Sadness is a feeling, but it's your thoughts that make you sad. You can't really feel your thoughts. So your thoughts is something that you all have. If you don't have them, you're brain dead, right? You're dead, like you're not really alive. So faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. To achieve that which we cannot see, we need to utilize that what we cannot see. Expression comes to mind, fight fire with fire, right? Sometimes you have to use fire to fight fire with fire. I've seen this video when they had those brush fires in Australia, and it was really bad. And what these firefighters did, they had these cans with oil pouring out, and it was fire. And they were walking around in crisscross shapes like this, and burning dry grass, so that by the time the fire gets there, it's burnt out. It has nothing else to burn. And so they stop it in its path. So they literally fight fire with fire. At war, they say, ready, aim, fire. At the people who are saying the same exact thing back to you. So people fight fire with fire all the time. If it didn't work, they wouldn't be doing it. So the best tool to utilize to get that which you cannot see, you need to obviously use something of the similar type. Something you cannot see. Because faith involves, like Esther said, something you cannot see. It's beyond what you can see. So let's see if we can discover something more about this concept. You're on a road trip. 2 passengers. You guys are driving in Mars, having the time of your life. Right? Life is a highway. And you're on a road trip with 2 passengers. Now, these passengers are permanent with you on your journey. And no matter what, you can't shake them, leave them at a gas station or anything. They're coming with you all the way. Now, the passengers, as we drivers know, they don't dictate where you go. The driver decides where he wants to or she wants to go. It's your hand on the wheel and your foot on the gas. So they're just there to give you company, make the journey more enjoyable or miserable, depending on who you bring with you. And we're going to read a little bit about who these passengers are. Those who live according to the flesh have their minds set on what the flesh desires. But those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. In your life, you literally drive, okay? We don't walk anymore, we drive. And your mind is the driver. Your body, this vessel, is your vehicle. You know, some are blessed with Ferraris, others with Geo Metros, kind of, take what you can get. But your mind is the driver. And the mind brought along 2 passengers, flesh and spirit. They kind of sit in the back seat. And they're saying, hey, go this way. No, go that way. Stop to eat here. No, stop to eat there. Make this decision, that decision. And these 2 passengers, at the end of the day, still can't force you to choose one way or the other. It's your hand on the wheel, your foot on the gas. Last word is after you. So you're on this road trip. These 2 passengers with you, driving along life. What are your 2 destinations? The mind driven by the flesh is death, but the mind driven by the Spirit is life and peace. The mind governed by the flesh is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law, nor can it do so. Those who are in the realm of the flesh cannot please God. Without faith, it's what? Impossible to please God. Here we see kind of a very similar phrasing. Those who are in the realm of the flesh cannot please God. When the driver, my mind, listens to this nasty fleshy passenger, eventually I'll end up at my destination called death. If I listen to the Spirit, I'll arrive to life and peace. So what does this have to do about faith? Because that's what we're talking about, right? What does all this have to do with faith? Spirit, flesh, yes, we know the difference. But here we see in the yellow text, the mind cannot submit to God's law when it is governed by the flesh. Okay, this is a fact we can understand. If I live by the flesh, I literally can't have the correct faith. Because faith, at the end of the day, is God's law. Faith is something God created. It's His law. And if I am listening to a different source, I can't have the right faith. I can't have the right religion, so to speak. I remember when I was young, growing up, I'm not going to say what age, but allegedly, my dad let me drive on his lap when I was learning how to drive. And, he allegedly would sit me down on his lap, and my feet were too short to reach the pedals, but I had my hands on the wheel, and he'd kind of be in the back just sort of letting me, making sure that nothing was kind of out of control. And it was very safe, and we were going around these very empty streets and, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And I really remember this moment because I could drive, but I wasn't. I was just steering. My dad was driving. It wasn't until I actually physically sat in the seat all by myself, then I actually drove for the first time. So when a person has flesh steering on his lap, and he's driving his life, out of control, this person can't submit to God's law. He can't. Because we know that faith is a God's law, because it was authored and perfected by Jesus Christ. So we see this evidence that faith is God's law. Flesh by nature can't submit to it. So this person who's driven, by this flesh, sitting on his lap, taking control, is going to lead him either one way or the other way. We only have two ways. We have sin's law, which will lead to death, or God's law, faith, life, peace, fruits of the Spirit, so on and so forth, eternal life. Now, here's kind of the biggest problem, I think, because we all know this. Here's the biggest problem we face. Right now, especially, I face this problem. Do I have hot coffee or iced coffee? Blended. Because you can't have both, right? But it's hot outside. I want a nice coffee, but it doesn't taste the same as a nice hot cup of coffee. You can't have both. And so same thing here. The Bible says, so I say walk, or drive by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want. You cannot please both passengers. You cannot cherry pick out of religions and different philosophies and ideologies and say, okay, this works, this doesn't. I feel this way. Okay, that's what's going to work for me. I'll call that stamp of faith. Here's what we can make out from this entire situation. Faith is assurance in what we need and what we do not see. Faith, right? It's invisible. Our mind, which we cannot see, needs to choose either spirit or flesh, which we cannot see, for to get the correct thoughts and directions we cannot see. And depending on who we choose, we will produce fruit, which we can see. Either fruits of the Spirit or acts of the flesh. Faith is not that you need to physically see behind the door to know what's there. But the flesh can trick you and say, that's what faith is. If you can't put your fingers in the holes, Jesus was never risen from the dead. You have to, for yourself, touch and feel it to know. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. But we know how flesh works. We want to learn how faith works. And in my own definition, faith is creating visible from invisible, to simplify it. And we'll elaborate a little bit more. Resurrection, bringing invisible life to a visibly dead person. Healing, bringing invisible restoration to a visibly sick person. Miracles, like we heard today, right? Having a car drive on invisible oxygen while you're visibly in Siberia with no gas stations around. Faith is something that isn't visible at all. And neither is anti-faith. Fear and doubt isn't visible, yet when a person's anxious, you can see. The sweat rolling down from your fear is very visible. The temperature dropping, the catastrophic situations you end up in. Peter, seeing the water raise above his eye level, was very visible to him. The Israelites, feeling the plague, coronavirus, I don't know what they got, they died because they didn't believe. That was very visible to them, while it wasn't before. Here's the biggest stumbling block for many people when it comes to faith. Invisible doesn't mean imaginary. But atheists think it does. If I can't see it, it literally doesn't exist. Show me the money. If you can't show me what's behind the door, I'm just going to force myself to believe the door doesn't exist. Boom, problem solved. The door doesn't exist anymore. But faith is very real. So how can we produce that faith in our life? Because we want to produce the correct kind of faith in our life. We don't want to guess. We don't want to say, okay, I brought my swimming shorts, but really, it's a desert. We want to make sure we're ready so that when we come to the door, we have confidence and assurance, 100% all in, life savings bet on it, because guess what? It's the biggest gamble you'll ever make of your life. And when you come to that moment, how do you have confidence and assurance that your faith has led you to the right place? But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Listen to the Spirit's directions. And the NIV version says faithfulness. And the KJV version says faith. Russian version says faith. Listening to the right directions. Connecting to the right source. If I'm out and about and I use my phone to call Christina, my phone doesn't connect to Christina. It connects to a satellite. And the satellite connects my service to Christina. When we want to achieve things in our life, we get there somehow. We connect with it. It just doesn't boom appear out of thin air, as we say. And faith is that driving factor that connects the invisible to the visible. But flesh wants you to pay attention on your feelings, on your experiences, on what does life feel like for you right now. If it's feeling bad, then maybe you don't have faith, then maybe this isn't worth it, maybe it's time for another religion, so on and so forth. Because the thing is, every single person is on this road trip, and every single person has these two passengers. But what can I do since I can't please both, but have to drive with both? They're both in my car. They're both, arguing which way is the right way. And I have to pick a decision. I have to listen. And I have to hear this conversation, in my life. What do I do? Take a taxi. Just, I don't want to drive anymore. You guys do it. Let's go back to this verse we just read. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. The passenger in visible flesh is crucified in the back seat. What a gory picture. But this is the case. You're on this road trip, and you have these two passengers. And one is just laying there dead on a cross. But you know what? He could be stinking, and he could be like, hey, remember me? I'm still here. And he's not going anywhere, not until we reach our destination. And so a person, when coming across faith, wrestles with this question. What do I listen to? What I want, what I think, what I'm guessing, what my flesh is telling me. Is it this way? Is it that way? Let's pick the one that works best for my feelings. Or flesh is crucified. Spirit, hey, where are you? What is it? Where do I go? Where's my turn? I'm driving there, but tell me where to go. Your GPS is in your hands. It's right there. I see it. So faith is creating visible from invisible by listening to those directions. Listening to what is the Spirit saying, not what is the flesh saying, what my feelings are saying, because that's crucified in the back seat, so that doesn't really matter. Faith is this attachment to God's very real, but it's invisible reality. It's not imaginary. It's just invisible. For a long time, people thought bacteria were imaginary. This doctor had this revolutionary idea. He's like, hey, what if we wash our hands between operations? Like, what if we just tried that? Oh, wait, a lot more patients are surviving. Who knew? Guys, let's wash our hands. Other doctors are like, are you kidding me? This blood is a sign of honor. The more blood I have on my apron, that means I'm a better doctor. I'm not washing my hands. And so they kept doing their operations, and patients kept dying because doctors weren't washing their hands because they thought bacteria were imaginary. I can't see it. Its effects were very real to the patients who were unlucky to be on that person's operating table. But to the doctor, it was imaginary. So faith is, it's invisible. You can't see it. But that doesn't mean it's not there. This reality is revealed to us through the Spirit. And then we produce this fruit that is called faith. Let's go back to this beginning example. So what's more important, the meals, the destination? Logic might say, destination is more important, can't waste time on food, or maybe the meal is more important because then we'll save on health. But here's what a person with faith would say. Well, where am I going? Where is my journey taking me? Because I have to kind of work backwards. In business and many, many successful systems, that's how it works. You figure out what's the end goal, now go a step backwards. What's that look like? Okay, now go a step backwards. What's that look like? Work your way up to you, and now you know what your next steps are. So a person with faith would look and say, okay, I'm in this vessel. I have these two passengers. Where am I going? I have on one hand, worldly success, instant pleasure, gratification. Maybe it's even something that I want and plays on my achievements and desires and kind of what I feel would be a really gratifying life. Or there's life and peace. If the destination is life and peace, the meals, the breaks, the pit stops are those invisible connections to God and His Word. It's reading the Word and say, it might take me a 3-hour detour, a 3-day detour, a year detour from my life, but this meal is what's going to get me to my destination, not the driving. Because everyone's driving, but there's two different destinations. And logic says, and atheists say, I just have to live and survive. Once I get to that door, we'll figure it all out there. If it's real, it's real. If it's not, it's not. Whatever. But a person with faith says, I'm going to get there. In this life, I need life and peace. So it's not about the driving. For some people, that journey is short. For some people who died for their faith, who went the extra step, who went above and beyond, for them that journey was short, but they took all the right turns. And this result will be a real visible faith, a real faith, something you can't see, touch, and feel, real miracles, real spiritual successes, real God's presence, but it'll come from an invisible source. If the destination is still life and peace for you, but the meals are different, it's self-driven desires. It's, hey, why take that detour? Like, I'm just trying to get to where I'm going. I'm trying to get to Friday night. Like, why go through the week? Let's start Monday night, Why? Because they're worried so much more about, what does it say? The journey, not the destination, right? It's all about just how you get there. And these meals, because they still have to stop and break, like they still gotta fill up. And those little meals, those connections, invisible connections, are tapped into their own personal, self-driven desires or egos, as we heard, right? So here's kind of the picture we portrayed today. Your mind is a driver. You have two passengers, flesh and spirit. The spirit will teach you the correct faith. He knows that you're not very experienced at this. He knows it's your first time ever living, your first time ever driving down the road. And he'll say, hey, make this choice, and you'll end up exactly where God wants you to be. And then there's flesh saying, hey, you got this. What? It's your first time, so do whatever you want. And then you are able to make this decision, whether you'll have faith or anti-faith. Let's go back to Peter's situation. How many minutes did it take for him to juggle the situation? Like, okay, I'm walking on water, but hold on, there's waves. Okay. Like, how long did he assess the situation? Split seconds. That's how much it takes to drown. That's why it says, when it says work out your salvation, you could say work out your faith. Same exact thing, right? Your faith that needs working out, because in split seconds, when doubt comes in, right? It's like bleach. Once you touch the counters with it, anything on there is like dead. So doubts, fears, guesses, personal experience, personal feelings, these things are invisible probably, but they will provide a very visible anti-faith. So this is kind of our message for today. We're driving out of church today, driving into the week, driving everywhere. We don't want to walk anymore, right? And in life, we're going to take exits. But one day we're going to come to this door and it's going to be asked, okay, how much faith did you have? Were you of little faith, of many faith, of no faith? Jesus says faith as small as a mustard seed. Something that's, you could say, invisible, maybe. Something very microscopic can do something like move very visible mountains. Very visible problems and setbacks in your life. With faith, anything's possible. The guy said, today really resonated with me, 88 times almost died, right? Like, you know he's counting. He's like, oh, that was 87, okay, 88. It's very real to these people that if they don't have faith, in seconds things could snap, they could drown, things could happen. So faith is important. Without faith, we can't please God. And if we're driven by flesh, we can't succumb to God's law. We can't please God either. So the first step to tackling, faith, is you coming to this stranger and saying, hey, this is what faith is. Before you even approach this problem, you have to understand, one, if you don't have it, you can't please God. And you can't have it if you're living by the flesh. You first have to believe Jesus died for you. He's the author and finisher of your faith. And then the Spirit will teach you those right steps to take, exits to take, and you'll produce true fruits of faith and faithfulness, right? Committed faith, prolonged faith, faith to the end. I think I've said this story before, maybe not. There was this, there were many martyrs out there. And there was one bishop, and, it was during, some kind of revolution. And so their job was to rewrite the Bibles. As much as, they're basically a printing shop, but by hand. No Photoshop back then. Everything was done by hand. And they were just mass producing, by their terms, these Bibles. And so when these invaders came and said, okay, Christians, oh no, we killed those. We set you guys on fire. So go ahead, line up, we're going to set you on fire. And they go through the line, and one guy says, do you rebuke your whole belief and say that, God isn't real? If you say that, we'll save you from this fire that's very visible and very real and very hot. And people say, I'm not going to do that. I believe in an invisible God. My faith is invisible, but I'll very visibly arrive to the kingdom of heaven once you throw me in there. And so one by one, they go and they do not rebuke. They say, I hold my faith. Because in a split second, if you don't, you could spiritually die while physically be alive. And when they got down to the bishop, this guy was like, yo, I just seen them massacre everyone I knew. I hear their screams, I see the pain in their eyes, the fear, the doubt, everything is very, very real for this individual. He says, no, I rebuke my faith. I don't want my faith. I want my life. And he got his wish, and he said, okay, well, wow, that's great. You're on our team now. And so they wrote out this contract. Hey, this bishop, very prominent religious individual. Many villages knew this bishop, knew this printing shop. And it was like such a, period, like, hey, this whole printing shop that mass produced all these Bibles, you have to say that was all a lie. That was all not real. And that you just did it because you're fake. Like you're just trying to get money from it. So when it came down to it, he read the contract, threw it away, and said, you know what? I rebuke my reputation, threw himself in the fire, and said, you know what? No, that's not going to cut it for me. So this bishop, sometimes our faith gets tested. And sometimes we come to these moments like Peter, we're in a couple of seconds, you're like, well, it's life or death right now. But we see this, right? Life and peace. That is something the Spirit's going to lead you to. And the way we get there is with faith. By using these faithful steps for each and every moment that we come across. And produce visible realities from an invisible source. Sometimes you'll see your faith is tested indeed, for sure. But trial by fire is good, right? Because you fight fire with fire. That's how it works. Question for this week and for the next one, because that was kind of our segment on faith. How faith works. How can we have faith? Okay, we understand we have to make decisions. Make sure we're listening to very invisible but real sources and create a visible, maybe sometimes invisible, but very real faith. So this verse that was there, since we live by the Spirit, since that passenger in our back seat, he's driving there with us, and we're driving with him, how do we make sure we still keep in step with him? How do we make sure that we don't push him to the backest of seats in the trunk, but he's right up there in the passenger seat up front? How do we keep in step with the Spirit? It's a question for next week. And next week, by revelation, we will tackle this. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love, and we're going to take a look at hope next time.